My memory of Mike is a very funny one. When the preschool students, the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds would come up after class to get their little piece of candy, if Mike was in the area, he would try to blend in with them. He would crouch down like he was a little kid. And when it was his turn, he would say, "Please, may I have a piece of candy?" And then when you would give him one, he would say, "Thank you." Just teaching the kids a little manners and being silly at the same time. I also remember him during the summer camps. He loved doing the go-kart summer camp with the junior high kids. I actually have video somewhere, and I'll see if I can find it, of him out there working with them when they were doing the races, and he was just like a little kid. He was having so much fun.
It was mid to late 80s when I was in need of a paraprofessional, and Mike applied for the position. I didn't know Mike at the time, had no idea, and had 2 or 3 candidates, but Mike had a business in Battle Creek called Mechanic on Wheels, and he would go out to different locations to repair things. For example, if your vehicle stalled in the yard, you couldn't get it started, it wasn't going to run, he would go to your house. So he was the at-home mechanic doctor, and that impressed me. He was young, I knew he could relate to some of our students, and so I was on the committee to identify who I wanted for my next parapro, and decided that Mike would be it. We had an extremely good, close relationship. Grace, and my wife and I did numerous things together. You know, if you're interested in becoming a teacher, think about this. You've been doing evaluations, you've been working with students and everything else, and at some point in time, this program will be available. And he was with me for 7 or 8 years as a parapro, and the reason he left, it was earlier than I was planning on retiring, but he left to become Mr. Mom. So he stayed home and took care of the 2 girls and the boy, and Mike was far more than just a parapro. As I got closer and closer to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I called him up and I said, "If you are interested, I have no idea what your future plans are, but if you are interested in this program, you ought to look at going back to school and picking up your degree." I didn't give the school the heads up, didn't let anybody else know. I just let Mike know. And I was on the committee to hire him to come in and be my replacement. And I think we had an extremely good transition. I was transitioning into diesel mechanics, but I wasn't real comfortable with that. Mike was real comfortable with that. So once I left, we changed the program from agricultural mechanics to diesel technology, and he took the ball from there. Once he started with this group of students making these energy efficient automobiles for the competition, he knew that I was quite interested in that, so he came to me and said, would the Lions Club be interested in helping sponsor that? And we took the proposal to our Lions Club in Lapeer, and they overwhelmingly supported that program and helped pay financially for some of the things involved with that. My wife and I are godparents to Aline, their middle child. Justin, when he was a kindergartner, first grader, drew a picture of Mr. B's pond. in the state of Michigan and identified where it was. And the pond was larger than Lake Michigan. They had been to Lake Michigan, but he says, you know, Mr. B's pond is a lot bigger than this. So he made the painting. And so we've known Justin, Aline, and Mary and followed them all the way through. Mike and Grace are still very good friends of our family, and we did a lot of things together.
For about the last 5 or 6 years, I would say, Mike and my class, we would work on a project together. He would come to us after winter break. His students would build a cart, a vehicle, something that ran, and he would come to our class and say, hey, we need an Internet of Things project for it. So my students would build these little projects to go along with the vehicle. And it was always something different each year. They had little sensors, like sometimes they would sense the temperature of the motor, or sometimes they would sense if somebody was coming up from behind, or the most recent one, they sensed how close the vehicle was to a wall for parking. And my students always looked forward to Mr. Bammer coming in and checking on them. He just had a way with the kids. I had one group that was 2 kids, Austin and Austin, and he affectionately called them A squared. And they just got a kick out of it, and they loved it. He had a way of challenging them and pushing them. Hey, do you think you could do this? Or do you think you could change it to do this? And he would just challenge them to go further than what I even thought we were capable of with all these little kids. The last competition, I think, was a couple years ago, and this is Mike. They had a problem with their vehicle, and we had a system. We had a really cool system. It was for parking, and it worked great. But their vehicle wouldn't start. And Mike knew from talking to everybody, because he was so friendly and everybody loved him, and he knew everybody and talked with everybody. He knew there was a team that had a vehicle, but they didn't have a system. So Mike was like, hey, our vehicle's not running, why don't you take ours and use it? And he let them do that. So that was just his spirit. He was just a good guy. We're gonna miss him.
2 years ago, I was deployed. That was the last time I was deployed overseas. And one thing when we're deployed overseas, you hear the old term, letters from home. So Mike was really good, not with letters from home, but he messaged me twice when I was overseas, over in the Middle East, in the middle of the desert, if you would. And the first one, he sent me a picture of Woody in my office, Woody Woodpecker. We go back and forth talking about Woody Woodpecker. He put him in my window facing out, looking at the school buses, and then the note underneath is on the job. That was really cool, seeing that, seeing a little piece of home from overseas. And then he didn't stop there, of course. A month later, he sent me another picture of Woody. This time he was on my desk in my candy jar. This time he's got Woody in the candy jar, and he says, somebody's gonna have to top this up. I've had my fill. Again, there's nothing like a little piece of home when you're overseas. And Mike kept that going for me. So I never forget that.
Last year I had the opportunity to come to Lapeer Ed Tech, and I was a new teacher. I was completely out of water. And I was assigned a mentor teacher, Mrs. Holliday, and I've been working with her regularly. And you don't have time to meet the other teachers because they're busy, you're busy, they're in their classrooms. And out of nowhere, this diesel teacher started stopping in the classroom, checking on me. And Bammer, I only knew the guy for a year and a half, but what a great guy. And he brought me Mr. Potato Head to my classroom the one day, and it's like, I bet you want to go back to police work. And I was like, wow, this guy really understands where I'm at in my life right now. And this little item has been used in my classroom for situational awareness. It helps the kids be more aware of their surroundings, which is very important, that they don't become a victim of a crime, or if they want to go into law enforcement, it's super important. And I retired my potato head from Mr. Bammer. I put my icon on his helmet, and he's going to remain in my classroom for the remainder of my time here as a memory to Mr. Bammer and what he did for 29 years of teaching and educating students.
Mike Bammer and I started as colleagues almost 30 years ago. We were the oldest and the most experienced of all of our Ed Tech Center, but I always said that Mike was, even though he had been here less years technically as a teacher, he always was the more experienced one because he was the foundation of our FFA, and he was the foundation also of our Ed Tech Center. As a union person, he was the knowledge above all other people. He had what it took to make a good person and a good representative of our teaching staff, and he always provided opportunities for students. Whether it be taking students to state skills contest, moving it on to national convention, and providing opportunities for students to compete at the national level, whether it was making biodiesel in front of hundreds of third graders, he always had that enthusiasm to provide opportunities for students. He also was the one that provided students in the electric car. He got so excited just to see that electric car and see those students race that electric car. And I remember him as a person who created beautiful opportunities for students and had success stories all the time. I looked to Mike for advice. He had a way to look at all angles of every situation. He always had the opportunity, or always had the advice to provide that all around, how do you look at it from all angles? And that provided me with so much support in my years of teaching, and I looked to him for advice. We co-advised the FFA, and he had a different way of looking at things than I did, but I think it worked because we meshed. He looked at it from other angles, and it helped me in my years of teaching and advising our FFA chapter. We shared a love of animals, and I remember the day that he came out and helped pull a calf, or he helped give me advice about pulling pigs. And he would say, just let it go, they will have them in their good time. And so I always stepped back a little bit, and it was a good support system for me because of the advice he gave on animals, because we did share that love of animals. I want to thank Mike for his friendship, and most of all for the support that he has given all of us, our staff here at the Ed Tech Center, and the opportunities he provided for students. They were awesome. I will miss you, Mike, but until we meet again, I know we will be celebrating in heaven. Thank you.
So one of my most favorite memories about Mike is my daughter was in the preschool and they were doing the trichathon out in the back, and they had a little chalk marked route for the kids to go, and the kids were out there with their trikes decked out and their high school buddies going around in a circle, and I was taking pictures of my daughter Eleanor, and then I turn around and there is Mike in a go-kart and then he starts doing laps with the preschoolers. He always found a way to have fun and just brought joy to every day. Another thing that we're lucky to have is one of his dog Maggie's pups, Stevie, at our house. So every day I have Stevie to remind me of how much we loved Mike. And the thing that I will miss the most about Mike is, it's just a little thing, but my room is in the front of the building and his in the back, but we kind of shared the same hallway, the same main hallway. So if I was coming back to my room from the office and he was coming up to the office from his room, I would just, see him down the hall and see his smile and, always wait for him to have a couple words and chit chat. And I will just really miss seeing him at school, because he loved Ed Tech and he made Ed Tech such a better place.
I believe it was my second year here. Katie Joseph brought in her childhood moped from when she was a kid, and my students got it running for Katie, and it was right towards the end of the school year, and no students were in the building that afternoon. All the seniors were already gone, and my parapro was gone already for the summer. So I got Katie's moped out and I was pedaling it through the hallways, and Bammer saw me from down the hallway, and he saw me pedal by on a moped, and he turns to Chef Sally and says, "Oh, bleep, I gotta go get my moped." So he screams to me, "Wait up." So he comes pedaling his moped up the hallway, and we proceeded to pedal our mopeds out of the front of the building and then started them, and we drove down to the bank on mopeds, two grown redhead guys riding mopeds down Lake Pleasant Road. We pulled into the drive-thru at the bank so I could cash a check, and the teller that came to the window and saw two grown men on mopeds was so impressed with our rides that she actually came outside and wanted to look at the mopeds up close because she had never seen such a sight. So that was probably one of my most favorite memories of Mike. He was always so spontaneous, and he could just make anybody laugh, and he was just always down to have fun. And especially when it came around to deer season time, I always enjoyed sitting in my blind while he was sitting in his blind, and we would text or send each other Snapchats. And his blind needed work and the roof was leaking really bad in it, and he sends me a Snapchat video of the snow just melting, pouring into his roof, and 20 minutes later he sends me a selfie of him shooting this monster 8-point. That was this past season, and all the time I'm sitting in a tree freezing my butt off, and he shoots this beautiful buck after only being out there a little while. So but I could go on for days talking about Mike Bammer, but he was a hell of a guy, and if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have made it through my first school year here, so I'm gonna miss him.
I remember Mike just stopping in, most of the time it was at lunchtime, and just sitting down and having a conversation with me, and he just had a calming effect about him, and he always looked at the bright side of things. He never got down into the negative side of things, and that's what I think I enjoyed the most about Mike, is that he just didn't get caught up in that banter of speaking negative about anything. He was always on top of it, and he was very even-keeled. What he taught me the most was how to be a good teacher. Spontaneity was Mike's. I loved his spontaneity. I mean, you know, we were doing this, we're getting ready for lip dub, and we had the classroom all cleared out, and all my juniors, which were my students, they were my first year students, they were all lined up, and one of the kids was playing the song, and they started doing the hustle, I guess you call it. And Mike was in the background hidden, and I didn't even know he was there. And all of a sudden he popped his head up and he started dancing with the kids, and I lost it.
Yeah. Mr. Bammer.
He would do stuff like that. That's what made him likable. He always lightened the room when he walked in, and he was great with kids. And you know, it's just like when he dressed up. I think he dressed up as Bernie. I think it was Magnum PI. It was either Magnum PI or Bernie. I thought but it was funny because he walked by me in the hallway as I was walking towards his class, and I saw this dude with these glasses on and I'm like, that's not a student. Who is that guy? So I turned around and went, hey! And he turned around and I looked at Bammer. And it was Mike. And you know, he was just known for that. And that type of person in an atmosphere that we're in is just, it needs to be there, because we need that laughter, that smile. And that's what Mike brought to work, that positive smile.
Snapchat, so I don't.
Thank you for all joining today to celebrate one of the teachers here at EdTech, Mike Bammer. Michael Lynn Bammer, born November 6, 1961, died Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. Mike passed away due to complications of COVID. He was a loving husband of Grace Bammer, a father of 3 children, Justin, Aline, and Mary, a father-in-law of Liz, Brian, and Colin, and a grandpa to Lena. Mike Bammer was a teacher, an FFA advisor, a colleague, a mentor, a role model, and a friend. He had the respect of all who had the opportunity and privilege to work with. To him, to know him was like having your best friend right by your side. You could always trust that he had your back. And if ever you had a problem, Mike was your man. He was also willing to help any way that he could. He was a leader that you could look up to. He would put others before himself, and I had the privilege to work with him alongside of him for the last 21 years. As a teacher, Mr. Bammer taught generations of students. For those that did not know, he started as Mr. Bowerman's paraprofessional for 6 years before becoming a teacher of 22 years. He loved teaching. When I started here at the EdTech with him, it was called VOTech, and our class was Ag Mechanics. We worked on farm and construction equipment. In 2007, he changed over to diesel technology and headed up a new program. Mike Bammer was more than a teacher that loved to teach a skilled trade to students. Mr. Bammer was the real deal. He took every opportunity to invest in his students. He gave his time even outside of school in areas of different interests, such as the Shell Eco Marathon, IVD, and alternative fuel programs. He also taught life lessons to his students about morals, values, and job ethics in the workplace. He also earned the respect of his students. Some thought of him as a father figure, and some as a grandfather too. He always looked for the best in his students, letting them know that they were valued. And if he worked hard, they would succeed. He assured them that when life gets hard, just look back where you came from and see how far you've come. And always look ahead and focus on how much more you can achieve. He will be missed. Today we meet together to celebrate and give tribute to the life of Mike Bammer, diesel technology instructor. Could we have a moment of silence to reflect on how he has blessed our lives? Thank you. The diesel classes of 2021 would like to say their final farewell in a way that we know Mr. Bammer would approve of. Please join us in shouts of joy for the life he shared.
Diesel students, please fire your engines.
thank you very much for you that you showed up for Mr. Bammer's memorial. The diesel class thanks you. Thank you.